Hi guys, it's Miss Brown speaking. Today we are going to be solving two-step equations. And so, just like it says, we have two steps to solve an equation. But first, I need us to understand our goal. What are we trying to accomplish when we solve equations? We are trying to isolate the variable. That just means we want to get the variable by itself. And you might be like, well, why do I care? We care because that variable and focusing on that variable helps us know where to begin working on the equation. Okay, and then here's how we're going to get the variable by itself. First, we are going to undo the positive or negative constant by doing the inverse operation. You could also think about it as undoing the addition or subtraction of the constant by doing the inverse operation. Remember, a constant is a number without a variable. Constant, just a number. No variable. Okay, and then our second step is going to be to undo the coefficient of x by doing the inverse operation. Remember that the coefficient is the number right beside the x, or the variable actually, right beside the variable, and it is multiplying the variable. So it is the number that multiplies the variable. And we may have to take an alternate interpretation of coefficient. So let's go ahead and just jump in there and get started. And I actually meant to start on this slide. So let's go to this first slide. So problem number 3 says negative 12 equals 24 plus 4b. Okay, so equations have two sides. And how do I know what's the difference between one side or the other? That equals mark tells us which side is on the left and which side is on the right. Everything on the left of the equals mark is on the left side. Everything on the right of the equals mark is on the right side. So remember, our goal is to isolate the variable or get the variable by itself. Well, the variable is right here. So the reason why I'm saying that is because that means the work that we're doing needs to be on the right hand side of the equation because that is where the variable is. So the first thing we're going to do is look for the constant. So I'm on the right hand side. I'm looking for the constant or the number that is just a number. Remember, no variable. Well, our constant is this 24. In fact, that's a positive 24. I have to do the opposite of a positive 24. The opposite of a positive 24 is a negative 24. But an equation is like a balance or like a seesaw. What you do on one side, you have to do to the other side. So I'm going to put a negative 24 on the other side. Now, what you're going to hear me do is 1 minute call that negative a negative, the next minute call it a subtraction symbol. Just be aware of that. So I'm going to look on my right hand side. I have 24 minus 24, which is nothing. And that's what I'm writing down, nothing. The only thing left is a positive for B. Now, you could put that positive there if you wanted to, but honestly, the positive is unnecessary. So I'm going to get rid of it. And here's going to be the issue. What's going on over here? I need us to understand what that says. I'm going to write it out horizontally. That says negative 12 minus 24. So we have to remember our rules for working with positive and negative numbers. When we are subtracting, remember we add the opposite, or we keep that first number as it is. We change subtraction to addition, and we change 24 to its opposite. So that would just be negative 12 plus a negative 24. Now I have to remember my rule when I am adding two negative numbers. And the rule is that we just add the numbers and keep the sign of both. So, of course, my sign is going to be negative, and 24 plus 12 is going to be 36. So, guys, when we are adding and subtracting and solving equations, please be careful. If we are not very conscious of our positive and negative signs and using those rules appropriately, we are going to be getting incorrect answers. So I'm just going to replace that with negative 36. So I undid my constant. Check. Okay. Now I need to undo the coefficients, okay, by doing the inverse operation. Well, here's the deal. Remember, the coefficient is the number that's multiplying the variable. I know I have an x, but it doesn't have to be an x. It could be any variable. This 4 is the coefficient. And right now, the 4 is multiplying the variable b. So I have to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. And since I need to get rid of that 4 because I want the b by itself, I'm dividing by 4. But what I do on one side of my equation, I must do to the other. So if I look on my right-hand side, I have 4 divided by 4, which leaves me with 1b. However, we've already learned that it's not necessary to put that 1 there. And then on the other side, I have negative 36 divided by 4. Well, remember, a negative divided by a positive is a negative, and 36 divided by 4 is 9. So I'm done with my problem. I have b is equal to negative 9. Now, let's say if you're unsure of yourself and you think, I'm not really sure if that's right. Well, you can take your answer for b, which is 9, and plug it in. So I'm going to ask myself, well, what is 24 plus 4 times b, we said, is negative 9? Well, that's 24 plus 4 times negative 9 is negative 36. And 24 plus negative 36 is negative 12. Well, according to my original problem, that's what it should be. So I know my answer is correct, and I can move on. All right, the next problem is 3g minus 5 equals 17. Again, we have two sides of the equation. The equation is separated by the equal sign. And remember, our goal is to isolate the variable. So it's important that we say, oh, well, this time the variable is over here on the left. So that means that most of my work needs to be focused on the left-hand side and getting that variable by itself. Well, the first thing I need to look for is the constant. Remember, the constant is just a number. There's no variable. Well, if I look, the constant is right here. And I also need you to realize that that constant is a negative 5, okay? So we have to do the inverse or the opposite of negative 5. Well, the opposite of negative 5 is a positive 5. But remember, an equation is like a balance or a seesaw. If 5 kids jump on one side of our seesaw, then 5 kids better jump on the other side, or else we're going to have some issues. So let me see what I have now. I'm going to bring down the 3G because I did not do anything with it. A negative 5 plus 5 is 0, which is nothing. And that's what I'm going to write, nothing. And then 17 plus 5 is 22. Okay, and so now I need to, step 2, undo the coefficient by doing the inverse operation. Now notice right now the G is being multiplied by 3. So I have to undo that multiplication, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So I need to divide by, since I need to get rid of that 3, I'm dividing by 3. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with a 1G. But it's not necessary to write the 1. And then here's the thing. 3 cannot divide into 22 evenly, so we could actually leave that as the improper fraction, 22 thirds. If we want to change that to a mixed number, 3 can go into 22 7 times with 1 remaining. So I can also write 7 and a third. And again, if I'm unsure, if I'm like, well, I'm not so sure if my answer is right, well, take your answer and plug it back in and check your work. So I can take this 22 thirds and plug it in for G. So I'm going to say 3 times G, which in this case is 22 thirds, minus 5. What does that equal? Well, here I'm going to simplify before I multiply. Those are going to cancel out, leaving me with just 22. So I have 22 minus 5, and 22 minus 5 is equal to 17. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. So my answer is correct. Check. Okay, so going back to this page. Now, same deal. We need to isolate the variable. And we have two sides of the equation separated by the equal sign. On problem 10, the variable is on the left. So we need to focus our efforts. I'm sorry, it's on the right actually. And we need to focus our efforts on the right-hand side. So the first thing we need to look for is the constant, or the number without a variable. And this is my constant right here. It's just a number, no variable. And I need to do the inverse or the opposite of that. The opposite of adding 7 is subtracting 7. Or you could think about it as the opposite of a positive 7 is a negative 7. Either way, it's the same thing. But remember, if 7 kids get off one side of the seesaw, 7 kids need to get off the other side. Okay, so what do we have remaining? Well, I have S over 2, and 7 minus 7 is 0. Let me look on the other side. On the other side, I have 10 minus 7. And 10 minus 7 is 3. So that's going to be 3. So now our new equation says 3 equals to S divided by 2. So now here's the thing about that coefficient. Well, technically a coefficient is a multiplier, but I'm going to take some liberties with the term coefficient here. I need us to look at the variable. Okay, the variable is over here. And remember, we want the variable by itself. And we need to think, why is the variable not by itself? Well, right now, the variable is being divided by 2. So what is the opposite of division? It's multiplication, right? So what we need to do is to do the opposite or inverse of division, which is multiplication. So we actually need to multiply by 2, okay? And what we do on one side, we need to do to the other. Now, I need you to understand what's going on over here. If I multiply by 2, I'm going to essentially have 2s over 2 equals 2 times 3 is 6. But look, this 2 and that 2 divided by 2 is 1. So really all we have is 1s equals 6. And that is our answer. Again, if you're unsure, plug that back in. What is 6 divided by 2 plus 7? 6 divided by 2 is 3 plus 7. What's 3 plus 7? That's 10. That's what it's supposed to be. Our answer is correct. Check. Okay, last example. So here we go. Again, we have our equation. And we need to isolate the variable or get the variable by itself. This time, the variable is on the left. So we need to concentrate our efforts on the left. And remember, we need to look for the constant. The constant is the number it's just a number, no variable. And here's our constant right here. I need us to understand that constant is actually a negative 6. So we have to do the inverse or the opposite of that. The opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6, or you could think the opposite of subtracting 6 is adding 6. Either way, it looks the same. But remember, if 6 kids get on one side of the seesaw, then 6 kids better get on the other side, or we're going to be out of balance. Okay, so I need to bring down that negative 1/3 y. And then I have a negative 6 plus 6, which is 0. And 0 is nothing. That's why I wrote down nothing. And then I need us to be very careful with this right here that says negative 11 plus 6. Hopefully we know that negative 11 plus 6 is a negative 5. Okay, so now we still have to look for the coefficient. And remember, the coefficient multiplies the variable. Our coefficient right now is a negative 1/3. So the y is not by itself because it's being multiplied by negative 1/3. The opposite of multiplying by negative 1/3 is dividing by negative 1/3. But what we do to one side, we do to the other. Negative 1/3 divided by negative 1/3 is 1, a positive 1, y, which is just y. And we really have to be careful with this right here. First of all, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So our answer is going to be positive. And we have 5 divided by 1/3. Remember, the answer is positive. Well, when we are working with fractions in division, remember we have to multiply by the reciprocal, also known as keep, change, flip. So I keep the 5 over 1 as it is, change the division to multiplication, and the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3 over 1. When I multiply all of that out, I'm going to get 15. So y equals 15. And again, if you're unsure, you can plug that in, but I'm actually not going to do that right now because I don't have any more space. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.